Hey guys, Jano Zero. Hope all is well in YouTube land, whatever part of the world you are in. So, okay, we're going to do some simple water bath canning. Here is the tomato sauce that we made in the previous video. The sauce is still hot. The jars, we run them through the dishwasher and are sterilized. You don't have to run your jars through the dishwasher if you don't want to. You can put them in your canner, your water bath canner, and let them boil for a little while. That'll sterilize them as well, and then dump the hot water out. So, and we've got our lids here in the hot water where they've been also heated and sterilized. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our funnel, we're going to put it into our regular mouth jar, and we're going to fill the jar up to just where the neck of the jar starts, right about here. And remember, I use these regular mouth jars for things that are easily poured out of the jar rather than things that need to be dug out like meats and big chunks of vegetables and so on and so forth. So right about there on the neck of the jar, that's where as far as I'm going to go. Fill this up. I'm going to take the funnel, set it aside. We're going to wipe the threads and the top part of the jar, the rim and the threads of the jar. We're going to make sure we get them good and clean because we don't want anything stuck on the jar that'll inhibit the seal from these rubber rings on the lids. Remember, I use these metal canning lids, and they have this rubber gasket that goes around the top. That's what heats, molds to the rim of the jar, and that's what seals. So we put that on there. Then we put our ring on, and we just put it down finger tight. We don't want to over tighten it because as this heats up, this all gets super hot and it'll start rising up, and then it'll rise up to almost to where the threads of the jar are. And then as it starts cooling and it starts settling back down, it'll contract the air that's in there, and that's what will form your vacuum seal, and that's what will make that lid pop down and stay sealed. So we have our jar ready to go. We're just going to put it straight into the canner. Remember, water bath canning is for high acidic jellies and jams and fruits and stuff like that. I also have a jar of pickles in here as well because the vinegar content makes pickles a high acidic item. So those can be water bath canned for sealing as well. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to continue filling our jars with this tomato sauce because tomatoes are a high acidic fruit. And we're going to just keep repeating this process until one, we either run out of sauce to fill the jar up with, or two, we run out of space in the canner. My canner will hold 7 quart jars. Fill it up, remove the funnel, wipe off the rim and the rings. Be careful not to even touch it with your finger because the oils off of your skin will cause that sometimes to fail as far as sealing goes. And we're going to get our magnet. We're going to get another lid, place it on, put it down finger tight, place it in the can. We want to make sure that once we have enough water in our canner, that the water completely covers the tops of the jars. That's how you're going to get your good guaranteed seal, and make sure that that way the entire jar, the entire lid, the entire ring, everything gets hot and everything seals properly. That's even heat distribution, and in order to do that in a water bath canner, the entire jar has got to be submerged. So, alrighty, well, we're going to, instead of boring the crap out of everybody with just watching me fill jars, I'll keep filling up jars until we get to the point to where we're ready to move to the next step. Okay guys, we have our canner. We have all our stuff that we're going to can in here. We have 4 quart jars of tomato sauce, 1 quart jar of pickles, and a pint jar of tomato sauce. Now we're going to bring this water to a rolling boil, which will be, of course, we'll need to put this on one of the higher settings of heat on your stove. A couple of things. I use a glass top stove. I've never had any troubles. There's going to be some people who question the whether or not it's okay to use your glass top stove. That's what I have. That's what I use. But be careful when you're, don't be banging stuff around on there, because these canners are very heavy, and they will crack the glass if you're not careful. When I was jarring up the sauce, I did not use the bubbler. Remember the little plastic thing that comes in the kit? I didn't use the bubbler to bubble the sauce, because there's not going to be that many bubbles in sauce when you're filling up your jar. They'll work themselves out. However, the jar of pickles and jars of apples, jars of whatever it is that you're canning, will need to be bubbled around the edge to make sure that you get all the bubbles out of there. All right, so now we're going to turn the heat up. We're going to put the lid on our canner, and we're going to bring it to a rolling boil. And once we get to a rolling boil, then we'll get back with you and we'll go to the next step. Okay guys, we are at a full rolling boil. Always open your lids away from you so you don't get steam burns on your forearms and on your hands. You can see that we are at a full boil. The water is boiling really nicely, and you can also, something I wanted to show you, was you see the air bubbles coming out from around the lids of the jars. As the sauce gets heated up, it pushes the air out through the jar, and then whenever it starts cooling back down and settling back down, that's what will pull those lids down to a vacuum seal. So now, according to the Ball Blue Book of Canning, which we showed you in the first episode of this series, they recommend that tomato juice quart sizes be canned and processed for 40 minutes. And the pickles will be fine, and the pint jar will be fine, even though they say for 30 minutes for pint jars, but it's still okay. It'll be just fine. So now we're going to set our timer for 40 minutes. And we're going to let these process in here for 40 minutes. Try not to take your lid off if you don't have to. Just let the canner do the work and let the water do the work. And then whenever we're all done, we'll see you in 40 minutes, I guess. So. Okay guys, we are at the 40-minute mark, and now we're going to, I always use a towel because the lid is going to be hot. And remember to open the canner up away from you. Take the lid off, set it aside. Now I'm just going to take my jar lifters here, remember that comes in that pack of kit of canning stuff. And I'm going to set my jars out onto the countertop, onto either a towel or in this case this is a cloth placemat. You don't want to set a really hot jar onto a cold countertop because it could crack your jar. So removing these from the canner, and it won't be but a couple of minutes and you will start hearing that telltale sign that your jars have sealed. And it's kind of hard to describe that sound. It'll just be just a popping sound. But once you hear it, you'll know exactly what it is. So we're going to set these out and wait to hear that sound. And once we hear that sound and these jars have cooled off a little bit, then we'll be able to see that these lids have gone down and have sealed, and they're not popping back up. So I would say in a couple of minutes we should be able to see the finished product. So we'll let them cool off for a minute and I'll get right back with you. Okay guys, now these jars will be really hot for a good long time, so you want to always be careful and have a rag handy in case they're too hot to touch. But you can see when I push on the lid, there's no give in any of these lids. They're not bouncing up and down. They're not making that little pick sound, tinkle 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 whenever you have the lid. So now what I'll do is we'll take the rings off. You can just take your finger and lift up on the lids like that. If that lid is sealed, remember that little rubber gasket in the bottom of the lid, here. What has happened is that has melted enough to where it is fixed to the rim of the jar, and then as this tomato juice or this whatever you have in your jar cools and starts contracting back down as it cools, then it pulls that vacuum seal, and that's what seals your jar. So now these are ready to label. I store my stuff with the rings off. That way there's no chance of any water that's been caught in here that's going to rust your ring to your lid, and they store just fine like this. So this here is ready to label and store in your pantry for a good long time. So I hope this helps. Please keep in mind I am not an expert. I do not claim to be an expert. This is just how I do it. And so thanks for watching. If I can do it, you can do it. Y'all have a great evening. God bless. The end. Buzz, the end.